In this fortnight's episode, the Praxeology Edition, we talk about praxeology and why it's so important. What's in the news with stories on federal surveillance requests, food labeling, encryption, and Jesse Ventura, and a Statists Gonna State segment on President Obama.
Welcome to The Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week. Coming to you from the state that is the home of the world's largest candy counter at Chudder's in Littleton with 800 jars of delicious treats, this is the show that will bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the Liberty Revolution needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at the Lava Flow Pod. This is episode 41, the Praxeology Edition, and it's Tuesday, July 19th, 2016, when at least 637 people have been killed by police already this year. What's wrestling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. Now, this is not a typical Jimmy's segment for me. This one, instead of being something that is really pissing me off, is something that I just wanted to know more about. So I decided to drop it in here to force myself to read up on it so my lack of knowledge didn't rustle my jimmies anymore. I hope you enjoy it as well. If you've done any reading in Austrian economics, you've likely run across this strange term, praxeology, a time or two and wondered exactly what it is. I know that I did for a while too, and I still don't consider myself an expert by any means on the subject, so let's dig into this and see what we can find out. Any discussion on the topic of praxeology must first begin with a definition of the term. Praxeology, according to the Mises.org wiki page, is, quote, the scientific study of human action. This term was originally coined as early as 1608 by Clemens Templer, but the term is now most commonly associated with the work of Ludwig von Mises and the Austrian School of Economics. The basic idea behind praxeology, though, goes back as far as the Greek philosophers like Aristotle, then further developed by the scholastics in medieval Europe. To go a bit further, praxeology makes the assumption that human action is purposeful behavior, meaning that a person acts for a reason. Of course, this is not always the case. Some human behavior is reflexive, meaning it's an unconscious response to certain stimuli, such as sneezing when you sniff pepper or jerking your hand away after you've touched a hot stove. Mises clearly stated that these types of involuntary actions fall outside the scope of praxeology. The starting point for praxeology is that human beings exist and they act. This is an undeniable axiom. Praxeology then logically deduces implications of this fact, and it says that these deduced propositions are a priori. A priori is a Latin term that means that knowledge or justification of something does not require any experience to come about the knowledge. So, for example, if you have 3 apples and you acquire 2 more, you now know that you have 5 apples. This knowledge doesn't have to come from you acquiring apples before you do it to know this. It also doesn't require you to know what apples are. Mathematics is considered an a priori knowledge. Another example would be that a person who knows a priori that, quote, all bachelors are unmarried need not have experienced the unmarried status of all or indeed any bachelors to justify this position. The knowledge is there because the definition of bachelor is being unmarried. So the opposite of a priori is a posteriori. An example of a posteriori would be that if I know it's raining outside, knowledge of this proposition must be justified by appealing to someone's experience of the weather. I can't just know it's raining outside without some experience to know this. Either someone told me it's raining outside, the weatherman said it was, or I heard rain on the roof, or I looked out the window. So what praxeology is saying is that deduced propositions from the fact that human beings exist and act are true a priori. There's no need to test them in the way that a physicist might test a proposed law of nature, for example. So long as a praxeological statement has been derived correctly, it must necessarily contain as much truth as the original axioms. As Mises.org says, quote, for example, when we throw a ball, We do not reason that it is guided by some mystical spirit or prime mover. Instead, we use the laws of mechanics and causality to examine the position, velocity, and forces acting on the ball in order to predict the future position and velocity of the ball. On the other hand, one does not reason that there is some sort of direct causal relation between traffic lights turning green and bodies beginning to cross the road. These are individuals acting with purpose crossing the road, who, only when the lights turn green, reason that it is safe to cross and then proceed to do so. The reckless individual who is late for work may rush across the road regardless of what the traffic lights show. So as you can see here, you don't necessarily need to have experience crossing the road to deduce that the people are crossing the road to get to the other side. It makes me wonder if praxeology applies to chickens as well. And, we don't have to have experience crossing the road to know that the fact that a person is crossing the road means that the act of doing so has some value to that person. That value could be that he's going to see his girlfriend, or he's trying to get away from his wife, or both. Either way, since he is actively working to attain his goal of crossing the road, there must be some value to him in crossing that road. However, it's important to note that praxeology in no way takes a stance on if the action is wise or proper. As Murray Rothbard said in Praxeology, the Methodology of Austrian Economics, quote, "Let us note that praxeology does not assume that a person's choice of values or goals is wise or proper, or that he's chosen the technologically correct method of reaching them. All that praxeology asserts is that the individual actor adopts goals and believes, whether erroneously or correctly, that he can arrive at those goals by the employment of certain means." So what else is implied by our actions? Anytime we act, it implies not only that we believe that our actions will actually make a difference, but also that we prefer the results from our actions versus the result of no action. So for example, a man would prefer to see his girlfriend instead of not seeing her, so he crosses the road. Further, he believes that crossing the road will make a difference in whether or not he sees his girlfriend. Another deduction from action is that it implies that we are not omniscient, having no knowledge of the future. If we had knowledge of the future, no action of ours would change anything. For example, if we knew that our girlfriend wasn't at home, no action of ours would change the fact that we wouldn't see her, so we wouldn't act. Also, if we knew that the future held for us a rendezvous with our girlfriend, we would not have to act to make that happen, as those courses of events would happen regardless of our actions. So why is praxeology important? Simply put, it can be used to discover the results or consequences of the actions that we undertake, and hopefully help us to make better decisions in the future. And this is not strictly related to economics, but a wide swath of human action, including economics, political science, anthropology, and sociology. So it can help in many areas. For example, if you want to see your girlfriend and you know that you're successful in seeing your girlfriend last time because you crossed the road, then all other factors being the same action will result in the same result. Or if you know that crossing a road when the light is green means very heavy traffic vehicles will be coming towards you very fast with a high probability of hitting you, then, as a result, maybe you should wait for a red light to cross. In economics, it can help us determine, hopefully, what the result of certain actions will result for in our economy. For example, what will happen when the federal funds rate is kept at zero for years at a time? Or what will happen if quantitative easing is done? So we can know, using logic, that when the Federal Reserve prints more money, and that money is chasing the same amount of goods and services, then prices are going to rise as a result. Because no additional goods have been created, only more claims to the same amount of goods. This is no different than knowing that, logically, the more of a product that is available, the less the price will be due to the lack of scarcity of that product. Say, for example, the power is running in your town, and there are 100 generators for sale. The price of generators will be relatively low due to the low demand and the high supply. If the power is out in your entire town, you can logically deduce that the price of generators will rise dramatically due to the much increased demand and no increase in supply to keep up with that demand. We can deduce this without having any evidence of it because it logically fits with our understanding of money and value. A quick shout out to my friend Mike for reading over this document for me and making sure that I was on the right path with it and giving me several pointers to tighten it up. Thanks so much, Mike. And New Hampshire, it really is like this. when you can be good friends who are extremely knowledgeable about Austrian economics, or soap making, or green burial services, or website creation, or videography, or blogging, or whatever you can imagine. All within your community of people who love liberty and are working hard to help achieve it in our lifetime. Exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode, or use Bitcoin. Get exclusive content, rewards, and help the Lava Flow become fiscally neutral while providing you more content. thelavaflow.com/support.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In 1984 is now news. A new federal report shows that the number of surveillance requests skyrocketed in 2015, and that courts approved every single one of them. That's right, not a single wiretap request was rejected during 2015. This is based on the U.S. government's annual wiretap reports, and it shows that U.S. courts allowed 4,148 wiretaps last year, up 17% from the previous year. Most of these were issued by state courts, including California, which accounted for a total of 41% of all the applications. According to ZDNet, the report doesn't take into account classified national security requests, which typically involve terrorism submitted to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or FISA, and those were already reported earlier this year. The government received 1,457 requests from the National Security Agency and the Federal Bureau of Investigation to intercept phone calls and emails last year, but 2 did not reject a single order. So in essence, they are trying to pass off to us that the cops always get it right, 100% of the time. I call bullshit, and yet they are feeding it to us one bite at a time. And as a side note, if you live in California where 41% of all the applications were, get the hell out of there. In the dumbing down of America news, a recent survey by the Oklahoma State University Department of Agricultural Economics finds that over 80% of Americans support, quote, mandatory labels on foods containing DNA. About the same number as support mandatory labeling of GMO foods, quote, produced with genetic engineering. The label in the survey read, quote, warning, this product contains deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. The Surgeon General has determined that DNA is linked to a variety of diseases in both animals and humans. In some configurations, it is a risk factor for cancer and heart disease. Pregnant women are at a very high risk of passing on DNA to their children. I'm not quite sure what's worse. The fact that these people have no idea that DNA is in virtually everything that we eat, or the fact that 80% of people want to use force on people to require them to label a product. Either way, this is not good news for our country. In Oops News, Libertarian Party presidential candidate Gary Johnson will not be on the ballot in Ohio as a Libertarian, although there is still a possibility that he will make the ballot as an independent. But wait, hasn't Johnson and Weld been running around the country saying that they're the only third party that will be on the ballot in all 50 states? Of course they have. But right now, according to the Libertarian Party website, they are only on the ballot in 35 states, not 50. The state of Ohio requires more than 30,000 valid signatures from registered voters in the state to qualify for the ballot, making it one of the toughest states to get third-party ballot access. This new law can in no small part be placed squarely at the feet of John Kasich, a man that was endorsed for president by the Libertarian Party's own vice presidential candidate, Bill Weld. Even though I am vehemently opposed to Johnson and Weld as our candidates, I do wish the Libertarian Party well in getting Libertarian candidates on the ballot in the other states where there are problems, including my home state of New Hampshire. It will be interesting to see if Johnson is actually on all 50 state ballots or not. And speaking of Johnson, former governor of Minnesota Jesse Ventura has come out saying that he will vote for Gary Johnson for president. In his statement, he said, quote, come November, I will be voting for Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson again, just like I did in 2012. He's on the ballot in all 50 states, end quote. As you can see, Ventura is, as usual, very misinformed, since it's already been established that Johnson is only on the ballot in 35 states right now. Ventura does get one thing right, though, when he says, quote, "I like everything Johnson has said so far. He's fiscally conservative and socially liberal. And this, my friends, is the crux of the issue. Johnson is fiscally conservative and socially liberal, essentially a moderate. Johnson is no libertarian. At least Johnson's message of milquetoast is getting out there and confusing more people as to what libertarianism really is, though. I'm still on the fence about what I'm going to do come November. I may not even show up to vote for the first time in my life. But at this point, I just can't see voting for Gary Johnson for dog catcher, much less president. If I do go vote, it will only be to support other real libertarian candidates in the state. I'll be doing an episode soon on the morality versus immorality of voting, so be sure to look out for that one. In Lava Spurt update news, Brighton Mellett, made famous by being arrested for burning an American flag, will not be charged with any crime. The Urbana Police Department released a statement that says, quote, "Laws dealing with questions of constitutional rights are extremely complex. The Urbana Police Department recognizes that this is a case where the right of free speech may have been in conflict with the safety of innocent and uninvolved citizens. Our officers strive every day to achieve a balance between public safety and preservation of constitutional rights. In this circumstance, our officers acted in good faith and in reliance on a state law that was passed by our legislature in an attempt to do just that. We respect the analysis of the state attorney's office and their determination not to proceed with the prosecution in this matter." So let me read between the lines here for you. What they mean in this release is, quote, "We don't give a fuck about freedom of speech. But the state's attorney's office realized they would never be able to make a case out of this, so we had no choice but to not file any charges against him." Now, it's very clear that the police department had every intention of charging him with this, or they would not have wasted the time to arrest him. Only thanks to the state's attorney, Julia Wrights, is he not being charged in this case. Here's what the state's attorney had to say. Quote, "We have considered the flag desecration law, an Illinois statute currently in effect. This statute was the basis for the decision by Urbana police officers to arrest Mellett. While that statute remains in effect, it is contradictory to the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in Texas v. Johnson. We will be discussing this issue with our local legislators and asking if they consider reviewing the statute, given the constitutional issues it presents. Finally, a government attorney with a brain. I think we may just have found a unicorn." And what really pisses me off about this is the fact that these police officers who swore to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States gave zero fucks about the Constitution of the United States when they arrested Brighton Mellett. This is why I say the Constitution is not worth the paper it's written on. In fight or flight news, it looks like the United Kingdom made the decision to leave the European Union just in time. According to Joel Valenzuela, reporting for Cointelegraph, the EU is setting itself up to begin a crackdown on anonymous Bitcoin trades. The European Commission released a statement that said, quote, "Tackling terrorist financing risks linked to virtual currencies. To prevent misuse of virtual currencies for money laundering and terrorist financing purposes, the Commission proposes to bring virtual currency exchange platforms and custodian wallet providers under the scope of the Anti-Money Laundering Directive. These entities will have to apply customer due diligence controls when exchanging virtual for real currencies, ending the anonymity associated with such exchanges." As Joel reported, quote, "The new regulations would not likely affect normal business transactions, but would instead bring exchanges that trade cryptocurrencies with fiat under increased surveillance and regulation, disallowing them from protecting their customers' identity. Good luck to the EU on putting the genie back in the bottle. There is no way they can shut down Bitcoin, no matter how much they try, due to the decentralized nature of the currency. It sure will be fun to watch, though." In What the Actual Fuck news, ChristianMingle.com, an online dating service for Christian singles, must now start allowing people to seek out same-sex relationships under a judge-approved settlement. Welcome to the world that Gary Bake the Fucking Cake Johnson wants you to live in. ChristianMingle.com only required new users to specify whether they're a man seeking a woman or a woman seeking a man. Two gay men filed class action claims against the site's owner, California-based Spark Networks Incorporated, claiming that the site's limited options violated California's anti-discrimination law. For now, Christian Mingle will only ask a user whether he or she is a man or a woman. Spark Networks agreed that within 2 years it would adjust other features to give gay singles a more tailored experience, the journal reported. So there we have it, folks, the natural progression from forcing someone to bake a cake. The next step will be forcing Grindr to allow straights on its app. You would think that there's not a place already for gay Christians to find a date online. Or maybe they could just go to the already existing ChristianGays.com or something. In Encrypt All the Things news, Facebook is testing end-to-end encryption for its Messenger app, calling it, quote, secret conversations. The company says the feature is accessible right now for certain people and will become more widely available this summer. Facebook says activating end-to-end encryption for select conversations will give users more privacy when discussing sensitive topics such as health issues and financial information. Quote, we've heard from you that there are times when you want additional safeguards, said the company in a blog post. Facebook already introduced end-to-end encryption in its WhatsApp Messenger back in April, but in that application, encryption is applied to all of the messages, rather than on a conversation-by-conversation basis like it's being tested in Messenger. Also, Facebook's secret conversations will only work from one phone, tablet, or computer selected by the user. This way, the company won't have to distribute unique encryption keys to multiple devices. Messages sent using end-to-end encryption will also be limited in format and won't cover the likes of GIFs and videos, at least not initially. Users will have the option of setting self-destruct timers on messages, though, just like in Snapchat. The app has some 900 million users as of this April, and combined with WhatsApp, processes a mammoth 60 billion messages every day. This is huge for individual privacy and will cause a lot of noise for the alphabet organizations to sift through that they can't access. I've been encouraging the use of encryption programs on this show for a long time, and the one that I have fully endorsed is the Signal app for both text and voice. The good news for the Facebook Messenger app is that the encryption is based on Open Whisper Systems' Signal protocol also, but I would still recommend using Signal. And in some personal news, this podcast has now been added to the LRN.FM Roundup to help get the word out about this podcast even further. Thanks to Ian for adding me, and thanks to Daryl for talking Ian into adding me. I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much. Have you subscribed to the Lava Flow on iTunes or any mobile device yet? Then what's wrong with you? Go to thelavaflow.com/subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the show. And while you're subscribing, make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review the show to help others find our podcast. thelavaflow.com/subscribe.
America, 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 fuck yeah, coming again to save the motherfucking day, yeah, America, fuck yeah, freedom is the only way, yeah, terrorists, you're gay.
Statists Gonna State.
Finally, a Statists Gonna State segment that's not on a Libertarian Party candidate. God, it's been a while. President Obama has yet again opened his mouth and, of course, inserted his foot. Not that this is anything new, of course, but this one is particularly, well, dumb. Here's President Obama at the memorial service for the 5 slain police officers in Dallas.
We flood communities with so many guns that it is easier for a teenager to buy a Glock than get his hands on a computer or even a book.
Yes, you heard it right, folks. According to the Commander-in-Chief, it is easier for a teenager to get his hands on a Glock than to get his hands on a computer or a book. Now, I call bullshit on this one. And, you know, what's worse is people clapped, which means there are people who actually believe this line of bullshit. But ladies and gentlemen of the audience, this is false, utterly and completely. So let's break this claim down and see what's inside it. First of all, there is a federal law in place that makes it illegal for anybody under the age of 18 to purchase or even possess a handgun or handgun ammunition. The same law makes it illegal for anyone to sell or deliver a handgun to anyone the seller believes is under 18. To be clear, In case you were wondering, books and computers are both completely legal for anyone to possess, regardless of age. My kids own books, tablets, and a computer. Yes, I know my kids having these things is anecdotal, so let's look at some real statistics. According to a 2015 Pew Research Center survey, 87% of teenagers had access to either a desktop or a laptop computer. 81% had access to a gaming console. 73% had access to a smartphone, with that number being 85% for black teens. A full 93% of teens reported going online daily. So for Obama's comment to be true, this would mean that 93% of American teenagers have access to a handgun. Is there anyone out there who believes that to be true? And we haven't even looked at books. I would imagine the percentage of teenagers with access to books is even higher than 93%. As late as 2014, roughly 1/3 of households had a gun in them. For Obama's statement to be true, it would require a 3-fold increase of teenagers getting their hands on a gun than the number of households that owns guns in the country. I find this to be a bit unlikely, to say the least. Not to mention that it's highly unlikely that even the total number of adults who are legally capable of purchasing or possessing a gun is 93%. This claim just does not pass the smell test. And of course, this doesn't even take into account the cost of a gun, which is pretty damn expensive, even for an adult. The typical cost of a Glock handgun is probably hovering around $500 a pop. A book can be purchased for a handful of dollars, or you can just go to the library or school and get your hands on them for free. Same with computers. This claim is nothing more than pure rhetoric, and a complete and total lie on the part of our president. And how disgusting is it for him to use the Dallas Memorial Service in such a way, to not only try and push his political objectives over the bodies of those slain officers, but to do it in such a deceitful, horrible manner. And this isn't the first time that Obama has made such ignorant and untruthful claims about guns. In March of 2014, Obama made the claim that, quote, it's easier for you to buy a handgun and clips than it is for you to buy a fresh vegetable. Now this time I'm going to ignore the fact that the president clearly doesn't know the simple difference between a clip and a magazine. However, this claim, just like his other claim, doesn't hold water at all. I can walk into any grocery store, pay a few cents, and walk out with a vegetable. To buy a gun, I have to go through a background check after having filled out Federal Form 4473, then maybe get my gun right then, or sometimes have to wait up to several days. Grocery stores aren't required to register with federal government like gun stores are. There's also not 20,000 federal and state laws dealing with the purchase and ownership of vegetables. These comments are coming to you from a man who has more than likely never purchased a gun in his life, and certainly hasn't purchased a vegetable in the last 8 years. If you're getting your information and talking points from politicians, you are going to the wrong source. Thank you for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my favorite Pokemon trainer, Jessica, for her help with this show. For the show notes to this episode, where I put links and other information that's been on the show, go to thelavaflow.com/41. I have a new review for the show. Mark D. Clare has this to say. Fantastic, well-researched libertarian show. I only recently found the Lava Flow podcast, and wow. Roger does an incredible job researching and producing an informative, entertaining program that presents news stories of the day through his anarcho-capitalist perspective, in a way that makes libertarians of all philosophical bents feel welcome. Lava Flow belongs in every libertarian podcast playlist. Wow. And, in case you guys are wondering, yes, that is the Mark Clare, the man behind the awesome podcast Lions of Liberty. If you're not listening to Lions of Liberty yet, I highly recommend that you do so. Thank you, Mark, for this awesome review. iTunes steers people to this podcast based on the number of subscribers and the number of positive reviews. So every positive review that you give me helps get this show in front of more people. Go to thelavaflow.com/iTunes today to give me a rating and a review. Thanks so much. I don't have any new supporters of the show this week, so I'm still at my $127.50 per episode, or just over halfway to my next level, where I will be bringing you a full 30-minute episode of the Lava Flow every single week. I hope you guys have been enjoying the 3 Lava Spurt episodes I've put out in the last couple of weeks. I'm really enjoying doing those, and it's all thanks to you guys, to my supporters, who brought me past the first $100 level, allowing me to bring you guys more content. So a huge thank you to all of my supporters. In the last 2 weeks, I've done Lava Spurt episodes on a guy being arrested for burning a U.S. flag, the Hillary Clinton non-indictment, and the murders of police and citizens lately. If you haven't heard those yet, I'd appreciate it if you go check them out. And if you want more of the Lava Flow, and to keep this show ad-free, exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per-episode donation of as little as $1 an episode using Federal Reserve notes through Patreon or Bitcoin through Coinbase. There are monthly costs associated with doing this show, and I need additional equipment to continue making this show better for you every single episode. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.